If China flips the script and turns Iran into their Ukraine to engage in a proxy war against the West is done. If we can see it here as a bunch of unaffiliated outsiders, if I can read the tea leaves as a 34-year-old American political commentator with a fucking Twitch stream, what the fuck are American generals doing? All right, let's get to 4 crew members killed in plane crash. They're saying it's a military refueling mishap. I got to go pee real quick.
This morning, CENTCOM confirming 4 of 6 U.S. crew
Another
members
$60 million assets destroyed. Another 4 American troops killed in the process. I thought it was 6, but they're saying 4. Hold on, I gotta pee.
In Western Iraq, U.S. Central Command saying a KC-135 refueling plane like this one crashed during Operation Epic Fury. Unlike fighter jets, these planes aren't equipped with parachutes or ejection seats. CENTCOM saying the incident is not due to hostile fire or friendly fire, but the plane was involved in an incident with another aircraft which landed safely. This as Iran's new supreme leader, Ayatollah Mujtaba Khamenei, vowing to keep tightening the vice around the world's oil supply. In his first public statement, Khamenei, who's neither seen nor heard, insisting Iran will carry on its strategy, saying the leverage of blocking the Strait of Hormuz must certainly continue to be used. Overnight, President Trump asked if he believes the Ayatollah is alive.
I think he probably is. I think he's damaged, but I think he's probably alive in some form.
Energy Secretary Chris Wright saying the U.S. Navy won't be able to escort ships until at least the end of the month.
All of our military assets right now are focused on destroying Iran's offensive capabilities.
This as the conflict intensifying. Explosions ringing out throughout Tehran in video seen online as thousands take to the street to mark International Quds Day in support of Palestinians. Smoke seen rising in the capital. And over 500 miles away in Lebanon, Israel now launching a growing assault against the militant Iranian-backed group Hezbollah, killing more than 680, according to local authorities. Our Matt Rivers in Beirut.
There was another airstrike right there. You could see the flash, and then eventually the explosion reaches us here on the rooftop.
The widening war taking its toll on civilians. UNICEF now saying more than 1,100 children have been reported.
What the fuck is this? I watched Top Gun Maverick and I assumed the Air Force was cool as God damn, chatter. You got cooked, huh? I just watched. Dude, I've been playing COD for years. I thought this shit was easy. What's happening? I thought this shit was a rap, brother. What is going on, Brody?
Injured or killed in the violence across this region.
Well, the Turkish military...
BBC is confirming that all 6 have died. All 6 crew members killed after U.S. refueling plane crashes in Iraq. By the way, they're doing the thing where they're like making it seem as though this was like a refueling incident potentially. The CENTCOM came out and said this was neither a hostile incident or a friendly fire incident, but a secret third thing. I suspect that it's actually, what are the rockets that they're using? The 538 or 238 rockets or whatever. Like there's a very high likelihood that I don't think it was it could potentially have been Iraqi. It could have been P358. It could have been the Iraqi resistance forces utilizing some of the Iranian tech, but I don't know. What is Al-Quds Day? Al-Quds Day is a day of remembrance for Palestine. They already had it in Iran last night. For the record, before people say it was a mid-air collision while refueling, I mean, it could have happened. It could have been the case. But there's also a pretty decent likelihood that they are just hiding that this was a combat casualty. You know what I mean? Yeah, mid-air collision with a rocket. All 6 members of a U.S. military refueling aircraft crews have now been confirmed dead after a crash in western Iraq, U.S. Central Command has said. The U.S. initially said it located 4 of the deceased crew. It said neither hostile nor friendly fire were involved in the loss of the KC-135 aircraft on Thursday. The tanker had been involved in ongoing U.S. operations against Iran and was one of the 2 aircraft involved in the incident. The second landed safely. There was a photo. The reason why I say it's probably not a mid-air collision is because the second Stratotanker had its vertical stabilizer clipped. So, or a horizontal stabilizer, is that what it's called? Or is it a vertical stabilizer? Like these things have like a big thing in the back. I'm doing a very bad job describing this when I have an aerospace and mechanical engineer brother. But yeah, here, this is a new photo New photos show a U.S. KC-135 refueling aircraft involved yesterday's mid-air collision over Iraq, landing at Ben Gurion Airport with major damage to his tail stabilizer. Yeah. Like, I don't know if this is a clipping. I don't know if this is a consequence of, like, clipping or what happened. Could have been that the other one was blown up and then it actually hit the other vertical stabilizer. Yeah, I mean, it's gone. The top of it is gone. So I don't know how valid this is, you know? The other pilot cortisol spike, maybe. Just know that normally these refuelings happen at like 19,000 feet, super high altitude, which is, out of reach of conventional small arms fire, obviously, and out of reach of like many of the weapons that the Iranians have and the Iraqi resistance forces have, except for they do have some rockets that can reach that height. So we'll find out soon enough. The Boeing manufactured aircraft are capable of refueling planes midair and play a major role in U.S. military operations. They've been playing an extensive role in this military operations because the runways that are in the vicinity of Iran have been toasted. They've been cratered. They've been lasered. If you're wondering why Iran was attacking the Gulf, this is why. So they have to engage in refueling because planes are taken off from a much further distance than they normally would in these operations. And because they can't actually go back and sit on a runway nearby, they have to get refueling in these bomb campaigns. And it could be a consequence of like the Stratotankers pilots constantly being in the air and being fatigued. Or it could have been that the Iraqi resistance, it was the Iraqi resistance that, clipped one of the two Stratotankers. CENTCOM said the incident occurred about 2 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, and the circumstances of the crash are now under investigation. A search and rescue operation was then launched to locate the remaining two crew members. U.S. Military Command Unit added that the identities of personnel who had been killed were being withheld for 24 hours so the next of kin could be notified. General Dan Kane, chair of the Joint U.S. Chiefs, told the news conference on Friday that the plane had crashed while the crew was on a combat mission. U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth hailed the aircraft crew members as American heroes, stressing that their sacrifice will only recommit us to the resolve of this mission. I mean, they might as well come out and say, may their memory be a blessing. Am Israel Chai. They died for Israel. It's the holiest cause that we could possibly engage in. We are trying to bring about Armageddon. We are evangelical Zionists. Because that's kind of what's going on here. So it's got to be the shittiest position to be in if you're General Raising Cane. I mean, I have no sympathy for that asshole anyway. I mean, he's a bloodthirsty monster. But it is fairly funny to think about from a truly, amoral perspective. If you were to look at his career, if you look at his ambitions, if you look at what he was able to conduct in Venezuela as a competent military operation, he very clearly didn't want any of this to happen, which is precisely the reason why in the buildup of the armada surrounding Iran, what did he do? He warned the administration in closed-door meetings. The administration clearly didn't listen to him, and instead listened to Benjamin Netanyahu and Lindsey Graham, the most compromised man in American politics. And then what did General Raising Cane do? He went to every media outlet he possibly could, and sang to them. Okay, he was like, "Listen, we don't have the missiles. We don't have the munitions to defend Israel. We don't have the munitions to even, God forbid, entertain a war with China. This is a devastating idea. We shouldn't do this." Remember, he did that shit. That is genuinely a unique moment. That should have been a warning sign, a clear-cut warning sign. Okay, and now we're nearing boots on the ground territory here as, battle casualties keep going up, as the economic damage keeps rising, as the American defense munitions are getting depleted day in, day out, as seemingly the Iranian missile striking capabilities have not deteriorated to such a degree that they can't stop Iran from striking Israel. They can't stop Iran from striking the UAE and all these other Gulf regional actors as well. So where do we go? Where do we go? Meanwhile, our European allies are talking to Iran directly. France and Italy opened talks with Iran in hope of securing safe Hormuz passage. Who controls the Strait of Hormuz? It's certainly not America, because if it was America, Italy and France would go to the United States of America. Breaking news, European countries, including France, have opened talks with Tehran, seeking to negotiate a deal to guarantee safe passage for their ships through the Strait of Hormuz, according to people briefed on the efforts. If I'm the Iranian leadership, I'm telling them, hey, don't talk to me, talk to the Americans. Forcibly decoupling America from Europe. Of course, European leadership are servile dogs, and they will probably still do the bidding of the Holy Empire, the greatest empire that has ever existed, the United States Empire, the Israeli Empire. So I don't think that they are going to follow through on whatever the Iranian demands are, but we'll see where that goes. What has to happen, and I've been saying this for the past 13 days since this campaign started, is a decoupling from Israel. America has to literally de-escalate and sever ties with Israel for this to happen. America has to retreat from its military bases in the region and start treating Iran as a sovereign actor that is a force to be reckoned with. Do the same thing that we did with the Ansar Allah movement in Yemen. This time, the damage is far more consequential to the global economy. The impact is far worse than what the Ansar Allah movement was able to. American naval assets in their backyard. It's too late for that. I don't think it's ever too late. I think this is a face-saving operation. You either continue pushing further and further, you either keep pushing further and further, or you go into the direction of boots on the ground and American empire is dead as we know it, or you retreat and you engage in a strategic retreat that allows you to save face and allows you to maintain some of your force projection capabilities. But we are run by a bunch of philosemitic boomers who are both egomaniacal and genuinely think that Israel is the Jewish state that has like hypnosis powers and you know, the Jewish space lasers or whatever the fuck, who are, you know, magic money people who truly do believe that, like, Benjamin Netanyahu, when Benjamin Netanyahu comes in and says, like, no, you got this, 4 days is all it'll take, they go, yeah, I believe it. They're still operating with 1967 mindset. It's fucking idiotic. I write, Vali Nasser, Professor John Hopkins, writes in Financial Times, another sober assessment coming from Financial Times, possibly one of the only media outlets, one of the only media operations that often is conducting these necessary sober assessments. Vali Nasser says, Iran is playing the long game. In war, geography matters as much as technology. Iran commands the entire northern shore of the Gulf, looming large over energy fields on its southern shore, and all that passes through its waters. Its Houthi allies are perched at the entrance of the Red Sea and along the passage of the Suez Canal. Iran is thus perfectly positioned to squeeze the global economy from both sides of the Arabian Peninsula. Meanwhile, Israel is trying to squeeze the other side, the entry point into the Suez Canal, the Red Sea entrance, with their own partition state, Somaliland. Meanwhile, there's also an escalation of tensions with al-Shabaab in Somalia that is really hurting the state of Somalia. So that's also another problem. That's also another problem that will have long-standing consequences. Of course, there are numerous other regional actors at play there. In Somalia, you got the Turks there. They have their bases there. You got American assets in there as well that are also fighting against al-Shabaab, trying to hold Somalia intact. Meanwhile, Israel is directly against the interests of America there as well, for the record, because they want to fucking destroy Somalia and have a base of operations that can fight against the Yemeni troop positions and the Ansar Allah movement in Yemen to control that entry point at least. It's completely fucking ridiculous. Anyway, those in command of Iran today are veterans of the asymmetric wars in Iraq and Syria. They are now applying the same strategy to fighting the U.S. on the battlefield of the global economy. Drones, short-range missiles, and mine-setting tankers and ports on fire can have the same effects as IEDs had in Iraq, only with greater impact, disrupting global supply chains and sending oil prices higher. Iran could sustain its counteroffensive more easily and for far longer. Furthermore, a ceasefire alone will not lift the shadow of risk that Iran has imposed over the Gulf, which is now experiencing its nightmare scenario. That is why Iranian leaders are saying they will not accept the ceasefire until Washington fully grasps the global economic cost of waging this war. Businesses, investors, and tourists may not return to the Gulf states if they assume that war could resume again. Unless the U.S. is prepared to invade Iran, remove the Islamic Republic's leaders, and then stay there to ensure stability and security, confidence in the Gulf will only return if the U.S. and Iran arrive at a durable ceasefire. And if America actually goes up the escalation ladder and falls into this trap and tries to do a half-assed military campaign, boots on the ground in Iran, it's over. I cannot stress this enough. It's fucking over. They have no way of establishing a supply chain with the front lines at that point. What are you going to do? Keep fucking airdropping troops? You would literally need a force that is the size of like the World War II Allied forces to be able to successfully invade through paratroopers a country with the topography of Iran. Like, this is what their forces are designed for. They have defensive forces. They do not have offensive forces. That's precisely the reason why their striking capabilities are designed to hit maximum 2,000 kilometers. Okay? Every single thing that Iran has built and designed has been for this moment, being able to shut off the Strait of Hormuz and being able to defend their own lands. Okay? There are choke points after choke points inside of the mountainous terrain that I assume Iranian weapons are directly pointing at. Why do you doubt our warfighter? Yeah. Our warfighters, dude. Our anti-woke militias will take over Iran in a moment's notice. Yeah, well, if this is a fucking game of who's less woke, Iran kind of beats out our forces too, don't you think? I mean, think about the IRGC. It's the most competent anti-woke military force on the planet. One of the most competent and most anti-woke military forces on the planet. So I guess they have us beat on that fucking front too, when you think about it. If this is a battle of woke for woke, Iran wins on that front too. Except they're pro-trans, but that's it. Remember when I talked about Iran being maybe a little too pro-trans as a joke, but like Iran being pro-trans in general, and everybody got mad at me because they didn't know that that was the case, that like you can get gender confirmation surgery in Iran, but then it goes a little too far and they actually do forcible gender reassignment in Iran to people who were caught having gay sex. That's true for people who don't know. It's pro-trans out of homophobia. They went too woke that they flipped on the other side. Isn't China and Japan the same? No. What? No. Not even a little bit, dude. What the fuck? There is no forcible gender surgeries taking place in neither Japan nor China if someone is outed as being gay. What the fuck are you talking about? That is a incredibly cruel and incredibly torturous medical procedure that is totally unacceptable. It's torture. It's fucking crazy. But yes, they do unironically do transgender for everybody.
I'm gay and Lebanese.
No, we like gender affirmation. We like gender confirmation. We don't like forcible gender reassignment surgeries. That's psychotic. Anyway, Shiites in Iran are already starting to recreate evangelical megachurch sermons from first principles. No, they've been doing that for longer than fucking the evangelicals have been doing it. The anti-woke alliance will break the MAGA base, but it's true. They do have, and their megachurch sermons are far cooler than ours. I'll be honest. Like the chest thumping and the fucking, and the singing and all of that. That shit's fire. Iran is a desert, mountainous, no supply lines, guarantee certain death. Yeah. Anyway, let's finish this. Iran says it will only accept a ceasefire with international guarantees for its sovereignty, which would probably mean a direct role for Russia and China. It may also demand compensation for war damages and a verifiable ceasefire in Lebanon. The U.S. would then have to agree to some form of the nuclear deal it left on the table in Geneva in February and commit to lifting sanctions. Iran's leaders entered this war with the goal of ensuring it will be the last one. Either it breaks them or radically changes the country's circumstances. They are betting on surviving long enough and squeezing the global economy hard enough to realize that goal. That's it. And I've been saying that, and they do have the capability to withstand this. In the absence of boots on the ground, which would be a devastating predicament for America. Remember, America was barely able to do this to Iraq, and Iran is not Iraq. You can't go to the fucking IRGC generals and give them bags of cash to be like, stand down. Stand down. Create confusion. Because that's what we did in Iraq, for the record. Okay? A much more unstable government. You can't do that with, okay, when people say 3,000 Marines are sent, I don't think you understand the troop deployment necessary to invade a country with 93 million people with like 10 million armed combatants, okay? It's like, what do you mean? You're basically feeding American Marines to the troop explosion machine, okay? Like, that's not a thing. That's just sacrifice. You might as well call it ritualistic sacrifice. Because of drones, there's very little the U.S. can do to force open the strait. They don't need missiles or mines. They can send $10,000. Well, no, it turns out they're $7,000 drones, by the way. They're not even $20,000 drones. They're not even $10,000 drones. They're $7,000 drones, which expose a $500 million oil tanker in 30 seconds. Exactly. Like, for the record, when people think like, oh, these guys are just like flexing, they're talking a big game. They're not. They are openly stating, bring your troops into Iran. They will come in vertically. They will leave horizontally. Okay. This is from Hezbollah. Chatter's logs are fucking disgusting. What is this? Liberals love to cry about the mental health of criminals. Don't you all? Would the English king get cinema interview the same way Zelensky did when he comes? I don't know what this person is saying. You need hundreds of thousands of troops. But you also need to establish a supply line to feed the front line. You cannot take the Iranian coastline and Karg Island with 2,000 Marines. Okay? They will get fucking slaughtered. You definitely can't take the rest of Iran, but let's say the goal here is to start the operation in a limited fashion. Okay? You have Karg Island. Karg Island is like where 90% of the Iranian oil passes through, right? But you can't just take Karg Island. You have to also take the Iranian coastline, because if you don't secure the Iranian coastline, you can't secure Karg Island. So what they're trying to do, yeah, VDV at Hostomel moment is exactly what they're trying to do here, but it's worse. It's even worse because there's no fucking land bridge either. So there's no established supply line, even from a logical standpoint. Like, there's no theoretical supply line that you can establish to feed the fucking troops in the front line for the Iranian coastline. There's nothing. They can barely hold together. They can barely hold together a bombing campaign. They've taken casualties with their aerial bombing campaign. They haven't even established full-blown aerial superiority over Iranian territory. I'm not even talking about the eastern Iranian territory where they have no air superiority whatsoever. They haven't even started to bomb the eastern countryside. They're simply going after the western countryside. And the reason why they're doing that is because I suspect they're trying to deteriorate the Iranian munitions facilities and their missile launching capabilities from the western flank, because that's the side that's like bombing Israel. That's the side that's like blowing up the military bases. That's the side that's the most damaging for a potential American military incursion. Okay. But like, the way that this will start, the way that this is going to start is with a potential failed seizure over the Iranian coastline. Here, I'll just show you a map of Iran again. Iran topographic map. A lot of maps being used on this broadcast. This is fantastic for all of my map autists and my missile autists. You're all fucking loving this shit. Okay? Here, hold on. Here, let's show you Karg Island. Okay? This is where Karg Island is. Okay? It's this massive oil refining facility and oil transfer facility. 90% of all Iranian oil passes through Karg Island. Okay? It's right off the coastline of Iran. Now, this is a topographical map of Iran. I don't know why it won't just like open the actual fucking image. It's so fucking annoying. But the thing is in order to secure Karg Island, if you want to invade Karg Island, you have to literally, one, destroy all of the launching capabilities that exist off of the mountainside, okay? You need to first destroy all the launching capabilities in Iraq and Kuwait especially, and maybe even Saudi Arabia. You haven't done so. Then you need to make sure that you have full-blown air superiority over the western coast of Iran. You haven't done that either. Then on top of that, you need to be able to deploy hundreds of thousands of troops potentially, or at least like, I don't know, fucking 50,000 troops, or I don't know what the actual number is, but you need a shit ton more troops than 2,000 fucking Marines, okay? 2,000 of our best Marines. Not going to work, okay? It's not going to work. You need a fuck ton more military buildup. You haven't established any fucking direct supply lines with that front line if you were to do such a campaign. So what are you going to do? Paratroopers? You're going to fucking you're going to drop ship our paratroopers into fucking Karg Island so they get what? Slaughtered? You have to also secure this coastline. You have to literally deploy troops across this coastline to ensure that you can protect the entire region. Okay? So if you don't have any assurances that you've been able to successfully cause attrition on the Iranian missile capabilities, Iranian drone striking capabilities in this dense fucking mountainous region, okay, and they're still going to keep popping their fucking heads out and deploy $10,000 lawnmowers that can take out billion-dollar pieces of equipment if they choose to do so. What the fuck do you think is going to happen to your troops at that point? You're going to see a lot of fucking drone compilations, and just like you see in Ukraine, but significantly worse. This time it won't be Russians in the grayest footage you've ever seen begging for their lives in their last moments. It'll be American soldiers. It'll be your fucking neighbors. It'll be your family members. Ground war in Iran would be hell, says Cato Institute. Military history teaches us that air power alone is insufficient to achieve the kinds of aims that Trumpians have set for themselves. Once again, it has never happened and it will never happen. You will never decapitate and successfully cause instability in a country through air superiority alone. We don't even have full-blown air superiority, not even over Western Iran, for the record. When Americans tell you we have completely created air superiority in the Western territories, they're lying. Okay, they still have denial systems that they bring out periodically, and that's precisely the reason why you still hear about like MQ-9 Reaper drones falling out of the air, for example. How does that happen? Why are the Israeli drones falling out of the sky? How is that happening? It's because they still have denial systems that they're bringing out periodically and shooting at the drones that are loitering over Western Iranian territory, both to engage in surveillance and sometimes engage in direct strikes. There's no will amongst the military to do this. There is no capabilities that we have to do this. There is a reason why we didn't do it for 47 fucking years. Okay? There's a reason. Because this was going to happen inevitably. So every general was like, why the fuck would we do this? This is so psychotic. It's so stupid. You needed someone psychotic enough. You needed someone psychotic enough like Donald Trump and dumb enough like Donald, okay, to believe in the Israeli intelligence, to believe in the might of the Israeli Air Force and the superiority of Israeli espionage, to fucking lean into something so stupid. It's unfucking believable. 2,000 troops is so funny. Oh, brother, we're sending our best Marines over there. You don't understand. Okay, first, the sheer size of the ground force would be staggering. Any serious American invasion of Iran would likely rival or exceed the scale of Vietnam or the 1991 Gulf War, making it the largest U.S. military undertaking since the Second World War. Iran's landmass and population size alone would prove a daunting hurdle. The country is nearly 4 times the size of Iraq, and its population is more than 3 times larger. Iran's terrain is, in a word, punishing. The topography is dominated by mountains, which by some figures constitute half of its territory. Unlike most nations, Iran's urban centers are located inland, nestled amid mountains, and buffered by uninhabitable deserts to the east and the south. This combination, here it is, just want you to understand again, like any parts of Iran that don't have these crazy fucking mountains is desert, okay? What do you do? How do you deal with that? You seem to be radically underestimating how hard each of the 2,000 troops are. Yeah, that's what's happening. Go home, Hasan. I am home, dumbass. The fuck? Fuck. Anyway, unlike most nations, Iran's urban centers are located inland, nested amid mountains. This combination of Iran's built and natural environments would mean that U.S. forces would have to advance through numerous bottlenecks to even reach Iran's military and population centers. And while Iran is in the middle of the pack in terms of population density, its capital, Tehran, teams with more than 15 million souls. A fight to capture the city against a determined enemy would amount to the largest urban battle in American military history. The idea of capturing and pacifying Tehran alone illustrates the near impossibility of such an invasion, using the troop density employed in 2004 battle for Fallujah, Iraq, as a point of reference, suggests that it would require more than 600,000 U.S. soldiers, roughly the size of the U.S. deployment during the Vietnam War, hence perhaps Leavitt's talk of reinstituting the draft. Looking at the invasion of Iraq in 2003, a similar invasion of Iran, given its population size, would require as many as 1.6 million troops. These estimates appear more daunting still when compared to the actual force structure of the U.S. military, which boasts about 2.1 million members in active service, reserves, and the National Guard. Of our combat troops. Simply put, committing 1.6 million personnel would mean using roughly 3/4 of the entire U.S. military, including combat forces America simply doesn't have. Such a war couldn't be undertaken without massive mobilization and a fundamental reordering of American global commitments, requiring the diversion of forces from Europe, Asia, and elsewhere. An invasion of Iran would therefore impel the United States to confront something it has long sought to avoid: hard choice about limits of its global military footprint. Summing up the scale of the prospect, the columnist Max Boot, not exactly known for his pacifism, described an invasion of Iran as the mother of all quagmires. This is why I say an invasion of Iran would lead to the death of the American empire. Okay? If you think the last 13 days have shown American military might and force projection capabilities to be nothing but a paper tiger, American troops getting killed by the tens of thousands would literally destroy America. It would be worse than the USSR's invasion of Afghanistan, which played a formative role in the death of the USSR. Okay? You can say, Gangi, we got contingency plans upon contingency plans. You have no contingency plans, especially because, guess what? Once your munitions are depleted, you have no way of restocking them. Because if China were to turn off the trade faucet and implement export controls for raw earth, as Donald Trump likes to call it, rare earth minerals, and magnets that are necessary for the American defense industry, you're fucked. Now you got no bullets. Okay? You ain't got no fucking bullets at that point. What do you have? You have no supply chains, no way to fucking feed the military in the front lines, not even enough troops to even launch a ground invasion. And then you're out of bullets, and the only country that is allowing you to even make new bullets and make new machines and make new fucking assets and make new munitions is China. China could just as easily turn around and say, you guys have destabilized the world too much, and in the interest of stability, we're shutting off your faucet. We're shutting off your manufacturing capabilities starting tomorrow. What do you have then? What are you going to say, slurs at the Iranians? Is that how you're going to defeat the Iranian military? You're going to anti-woke them? Don't worry. Our hardest-dicked Marines are going to be fucking saying, you fucking jihadi, you sand N-word, and then they're going to perish. Not that it matters, because all of the worst-case scenarios that I keep describing to you guys are worst-case scenarios that many military generals don't want to even contend with in these rooms, because all of the fucking generals that would have told Donald Trump, you're a fucking idiot, stop this, have been fired. So they don't even explain these issues to Trump, in my opinion. I suspect that they're not even doing that. Plus, you don't even normally want to do that because, you have the same like career ambitions as anybody else. So you don't want to tell you don't want to tell people up the fucking ranks that this shit is not going to work. It's gonna destroy the country. Then comes the next obvious problem: fighting the war. While Iran's military would likely lack air superiority and remains less technologically advanced than that of the United States, the Islamic republics shouldn't be taken lightly. Before the outbreak of the current war, the country's regular armed forces were estimated at roughly 420,000 personnel. Iran's more ideologically committed Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, numbered around 190,000, backed by a militia force known as Basij of more than 600,000. How much of this force could ultimately resist an invasion is speculative. Some may defect and others removed from the battlefield before they can fight. But what is clear is that Iran would likely adhere to its long-standing doctrine of defense in depth. Drawing on lessons from the Iran-Iraq War, Iranian planners adopted what they call a mosaic strategy, which they've already implemented. Decentralized command structures combined with a willingness to trade territory to wear down an invading force through attrition. Supporting this strategy would be Iran's still significant arsenal of rockets and drones. These have already surprised U.S. military officials in recent engagements and could prove even more dangerous on Iranian soil, where shorter flight times would give the Americans far less warning. Iranian militias in the region, too, are battle-hardened, versed in irregular warfare, and in many cases acquainted with American tactics. I've explained this to you over and over again as well. The reason why they're very capable is because they've been fighting ISIS in the region for the last 20 fucking years. Oftentimes alongside the American forces, by the way, ironically enough. Pentagon to deploy another 5,000 additional service members. Yeah, I mean, this is literally what's going on, dude. Just... It's the meme, is a Twitter meme of like the guy who keeps feeding stray kittens to the coyotes in his backyard, you know? Just don't worry. We'll put 5,000 of our hardest dicked men and women into the Iranian meat grinder. It'll be fine. This kind of troop deployment signals one thing and one thing only. Donald Trump is not backing away because he's an absolute fucking moron. Oh my God, this is so devastating. U.S. forces would likely find themselves fighting a determined asymmetric opponent, armed with effective weapons and operating on difficult terrain. For a military that has not attempted a major invasion in more than 2 decades and that remains only partially tested against modern drone warfare, such a fight would be far from easy. Like, Iraq is the best case scenario, right? Iraq is the best case scenario. And even then, week after week, many of you are too young to remember this. And I certainly was, kind of young as well. But I remember, reading about it afterwards and also learning about it in the time frame and while it was happening, that there were mistake after mistake after mistake. There were mistakes upon mistakes being committed because that's how war is. Okay? And that was the best case scenario. Iraq did not have the solid fundamentals that Iran has. And even then, there were issues. In short, Iranian commanders would aim to draw the United States into a long and bloody war of attrition, and they would have the terrain and urban density to do it. Some will argue that the past is not prologue, that the Iranian regime is unpopular and therefore unlikely to inspire serious resistance. It's telling, however, that American bombings have yet to create fissures in the regime, nor has the American air campaign inspired the Iranian people to revolt. On the contrary, all available evidence points to regime consolidation and the closing of the gap between public sentiment and elite opinion. Then, 2, critics underestimate the power of nationalism, particularly in the Iranian case, the rally around the flag effect. The well-documented tendency of citizens to unite behind their government in wartime was most clearly demonstrated in Iran after Saddam Hussein invaded the country in 1980, a move that ultimately consolidated the very regime the Iraqi dictator had hoped to topple. That was our doing as well, by the way. Even under the most ideal circumstances of state collapse, like those seen in the early days of George W. Bush's Iraq War, a post-invasion insurgency in Iran would be all but certain between the most fervent supporters of the IRGC and with the potential backing of Shiite militias across the region. It would not take many committed fighters to prolong the conflict. As Washington learned in both Iraq and Afghanistan, even a relatively small but determined insurgent force can sustain a war for years. That force could draw from an estimated fit-to-service population in Iran of 41 million, plus the larger Shiite sphere, including warriors from Iraq, Bahrain, Lebanon, and Pakistan, among others. Much like Iraq and Afghanistan, the defeat of the Iranian army would be a fleeting victory, assuredly followed by a bloody and open-ended slog with an insurgency. It's far more consequential and far worse than the Taliban, who, by the way, I don't know if you guys have been looking at the numbers on the board, currently rule Afghanistan after 20 fucking years of occupation. Fantastic. This time it's even worse, though. Finally, an American escalation into a conventional ground invasion would deepen the already daunting regional crisis. I will say, by the way, straight up, removing all troops from Afghanistan has played a major role in diminishing American capabilities. I will say that. Like, withdrawing from Afghanistan completely, which was ironically Trump's plan to begin with, and withdrawing from the air bases as well, has made it so that Iran has has no one in their other flank that could prove to create a supply chain. So there is that too. JD Pondon, trust the plan, folks. What is this? Your speculation about the internal dynamics?
What is your reporting about the dynamics in the White House? Yeah.
The other day I was talking to Daniel Davis, who's career military, and he was supposed to be one of Tulsi Gabbard's deputies in this administration. And then Republicans and the Israel lobby went ballistic because he had been a critic of the Gaza war and had said critical things about Israel. And there's a career decorated military officer, and he was going to be put in the position of presenting the presidential daily brief to Donald Trump. This just happened right at the beginning of this Trump administration. So then they withdrew his nomination. So Daniel Davis would have been, a real voice of kind of objectivity and independent thought, but also, a longtime military thinker. And he was saying that he still maintains contact with some people. This was just recently I spoke to him, that he maintains contact with some people. He said there's only like a handful of sane people left in the inner circle when it comes to anything having to do with national security or specifically with this Iran, and that there's a vibe that anybody who's welcome to sort of be giving contrary views, it's that you're going to be viewed as disloyal. It's like you're in a kind of authoritarian dictatorship and you're like afraid that Honecker from the Democratic German Republic is going to like oust you if you say the wrong thing. That's totally sort of counter to the idea that when it comes to sensitive issues like waging war, especially this kind of war based on nonsense, that you don't want critical voices. I mean, Tulsi Gabbard is the embodiment of what happened to the isolationist wing of the
the primary reason why Iraqi invasion succeeded wasn't due to Iraq being unprepared, but because the Republican Guard and the army had conflicting plans on how to respond to the invasion. That, but also on top of that, they literally bribed the generals, man. The American CIA was already in there in a way where Mossad and CIA is not inside of Iran. They literally straight up bribed the generals to surrender ahead of time. Like, that's it. They were bloodthirsty monsters, these neocons that invaded Iraq, that invaded Afghanistan. They were bloody, they were disgusting, they were animals, but they were competent, okay? America has that same ambition of waging war and destabilizing entire regions and killing possibly millions of people by way of sanctions and by way of direct combat casualties. But they're also incompetent. They are incompetent. That's it. And not only are they incompetent, but after 20 years of defense bloat, and shitification has clearly hit our military as well, in ways that even I could not have foreseen. I'm not exactly a fan of the American military, as you guys know. I'm a very outspoken critic of American imperialism, but I always thought that I had a fairly sober assessment of our military capabilities. I thought that there was a likelihood that American military was a paper tiger, but I did not think it was this big of a fucking paper tiger. Okay? Straight up. The first indication that maybe we were not cut out for this happened in Russia, when Russia invaded Ukraine. People presented that as a fantastic success. For 5% of our military budget, we are able to destroy 50% of the Russian military forces without a single American active duty service member dying in combat. That was what Lindsey Graham said. That's what Elizabeth Warren said. And yet Russia hardened its positions on eastern Ukraine and now have permanently annexed many territories in eastern Ukraine, with no end in sight to that conflict without completely ceding that territory to Russia, okay? It didn't work. The Ukrainian counteroffensive failed. With all the Western backing that Ukraine got, targeting capabilities, endless amounts of munitions, it was very clear that the Western world could no longer engage in proxies with a country like Russia, engage in a proxy war with a country like Russia, where they would reach a level of success. That was the first indication that America wasn't as powerful and the Western world wasn't as mighty as we once thought it was. When you got a country that's crazy enough to fight back. when you got a country that's crazy enough to cut through militarily. But this is something totally different. Billions of dollars lost. Are you dumb? What do you mean? Ukraine is still holding against Russian imperialism? I know, but the goal wasn't permanent military annexation of eastern territories by Russia. The goal was a complete cessation of Russian forces, purging all of the Russian forces off of Ukrainian territory, and maybe even taking back Crimea. Crimea is completely gone, and now the calculation is shifted to a de facto and de jure recognition of annexed territories. You understand that, right? That's not a fucking success. It's not a success at all. I'm not talking about the morality. I'm not talking about the morality of Russian actions. Russian actions were immoral. Russian expansion, Russian irredentist actions are totally immoral, totally unacceptable. I'm looking at this from an amoral perspective. If I'm looking at it just like analysis between two different planks, two different poles of power in the world fighting against one another, it was not the military success that Western countries thought it would be. Immoral? The fuck is immoral? I mean, nation states do not engage in morality, obviously. I noticed you didn't object to calling Russia imperialist. Curious? Yes, because it's not technically imperialism, it's irredentism, but it doesn't even fucking matter. It's all the same. It's illegal, it's immoral, it's unjustifiable. But illegal, immoral, and unjustifiable acts can still be a strategic success for the ambitions of a country that is not in the orbit of influence of the Western world. This is something totally different, though, because this is direct American military intervention failing to defend American military assets, failing to defend American bases and American security partners. Okay? After billions and billions of dollars of investment into the United States of America from petro-capitalist states that obviously want to diversify their income portfolios and diversify their economy away from being like single resource countries that need a steady flow of both tourism and expats to come in and even work in their extraction industries. These countries have to be safeguarded by American security cooperation. America has left them behind. It's unbelievable. That is like the totality of that is like trillions of dollars of investment, trillions of dollars of assets in general that America has left behind at the behest of Israel. It is nutty. It is unimaginable. There is a reason why we didn't do this for 47 years. You think Israel and America weren't worried about this calculation of a sovereign Iran that can easily control the Strait of Hormuz and do exactly what they're doing now? The reason why we did the Iran-Iraq war. That's the reason why we sent in the Iraqi Ba'athist forces into Iran to try and destabilize the country, to try and overthrow the Ayatollah. It didn't work. It failed. But we didn't stop there. And now you have a complete failure, a spectacular failure as America goes up the escalation ladder, potentially with boots on the ground. That, I suspect, will lead to American demise, complete collapse of American empire. Finally, an American escalation into conventional ground invasion would deepen the already daunting regional crisis. Deploying ground troops in Iran would provide an ample opportunity for America's great power rivals, Russia and China, to drain Uncle Sam of blood and treasure. So far, the pair have yet to expand their assistance to Tehran beyond diplomatic and intelligence support. But the presence of American forces on Iranian soil would provide Moscow and Beijing with a tempting pressure point against a superpower that is already overextended, indebted, and domestically fractured. Iran then could become a bloody site of great power competition. If China flips the script and turns Iran into their Ukraine to engage in a proxy war against the West is done. If we can see it here as a bunch of unaffiliated outsiders If I can read the tea leaves as a 34-year-old American political commentator with a fucking Twitch stream, what the fuck are American generals doing? That's why I jokingly said American generals would probably do like a fucking a general's coup similar to Adolf Hitler before they would allow this to happen, but who knows? Given the totality of Iran's geography, demographics, military capability, and geopolitical connections, the prospect of an American invasion of the country should be unthinkable. Yet Trump's ill-considered decision to launch the war, coupled with his vague but ambitious goals, has made this impossible scenario a military possibility. Given the horrific costs of such an invasion would entail, however, Trump should choose a different path, declare quote-unquote victory, and de-escalate. That's my argument as well. That's what I'm urging America to do as well. I said this yesterday. America has shown that they are a paper tiger, okay? Mao Zedong might have been right, maybe too early, but America has shown itself to be a paper tiger, okay? Decades ago, Chairman Mao Zedong foretold that the United States' numerous overseas military bases were a noose that the United States had fashioned around its neck. He said that the world's people, including Americans who were victims of imperialism, would band together to oppose it. The United States has set up hundreds of military bases in many countries all over the world. China's territory of Taiwan, Lebanon, and all military bases of the United States on foreign soil are so many nooses around the neck of U.S. imperialism. The nooses have been fashioned by the Americans themselves and by nobody else. And it is they themselves who have put these nooses around their own, the ends of the ropes to the Chinese people, to the peoples of the Arab countries, and all of the peoples of the world who love peace and oppose aggression. The longer the U.S. aggressors remain in those places, the tighter the nooses around their necks will become. This was a speech at the Supreme State Conference on September 8th, 1958. Imperialism will not last long because it always does evil things. It persists in grooming and supporting reactionaries in all countries who are against the people. It has forcibly seized many colonies and semi-colonies and many military bases, and it threatens the peace with atomic war. Thus, forced by imperialism to do so, more than 90% of the people of the world are rising or will rise up in struggle against it. This is the part that I think Mao was wrong on in his assessment. He believed that people would be wise enough to rise up in real time against American imperialism in all of the different places. But this is not dissimilar to what I always say. 800 military bases can very quickly turn into 800 military occupations. Remember, without soft power, as Donald Trump has moved away from soft power initiatives, defunding U.S. aid, and moving into a completely hard power style of American imperialism, what did I say? 800 military bases can turn into 800 military occupations very quickly, and no country on the planet has the capacity to wage war on 800 different military bases. Something that I've said over and over again, and we've seen that happen in the Gulf. We saw that happen in the Gulf, and it happened in 12 fucking days, and it's continuing to happen. So much so that we pulled our THAAD missile systems out of South Korea. Yet imperialism is still alive, still running amok in Asia, Africa, and Latin America. In the West, imperialism is still oppressing the people at home. The situation must change. It is the task of the people of the whole world to put an end to the aggression and oppression perpetrated by imperialism, and chiefly by U.S. imperialism. That was in an interview with Xinhua news agency correspondent on September 29th, 1958. And in 1946, Mao talked with an American correspondent, Anna Louise Strong. To start a war, the U.S. reactionaries must first attack the American people. They are already attacking the American people, oppressing the workers and democratic circles of the United States politically and economically, and preparing to impose fascism. The reactionaries are paper tigers. In appearance, the reactionaries are terrifying, but in reality, they are not so powerful. From a long-term point of view, it is not the reactionaries, but the people who are really powerful. Video is 145K since posted yesterday. What is this? I said American imperialism is a paper tiger, and now the whole world knows we must retreat from endless military incursions, focus on diplomacy while rebuilding our country, and allow nations in the periphery to have dignity and sovereignty immediately. One day, I wish that this will be the resilient attitude of the peoples, both in the United States and all around the world. Read Combat Liberalism. Mao is specifically calling you out on that one. Brother, as someone who who has read a decent amount of Mao at this point, why in the ever-loving fuck are you comparing a country that was in the grip of war, led by fucking warlords, regional territorial warlords, and numerous Western colonial superpowers, that was comprised entirely of a peasant force? And even then, where the CPC had to coalesce around the much more popular KMT, the nationalist forces, in an effort to wage war against another imperial power in the region that was dominating it and doing the Holocaust Chinese style, Japan. How can you make a comparison between the material conditions in China during the Sino-Japanese War versus 2026 United States of America? You might have the brain of a Chinese peasant. Probably not, though, because the Chinese peasant understood the situation a lot better than you understand your current predicament. Okay? But you are utterly delusional if you think that there is anything that resembles a Maoist ideology in the American heartland. You can LARP to the best of your fucking ability. But if you cannot apply Marxist orthodoxy to current material conditions, you are nothing but a LARPer. You are no different than Pete Hegseth in that regard. He might be a reactionary. He's a LARPer nonetheless. He thinks if you say slurs and be anti-woke, you will dominate all of your opponents. You do the same. You do the same with the banner, with a red banner instead. It's idiotic. Please stop. Behave like a fucking adult and learn to read the fucking room. Learn to analyze your current material conditions. As a matter of fact, that's what the Chinese did, and that's why they were so effective in developing their country. Marxist-Leninism is not one size fits all. And if you are a Maoist of any sort, if you're abiding by Maoism as your principled ideological stance here, okay, you have to understand that the most successful Communist Party formation in the world right now was able to analyze the current material conditions and adopt accordingly to said material conditions as a Marxist-Leninist movement. China is what I'm referencing. What about the Black Panthers? Oh my God, brother, please stop.